Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
In episode 35, Mikita Smith discusses with us how we need to be intentional as we set goals for how we want to serve others in our business.
That is true. And a lot of times we find ourselves feeling like we're powerless, like our voice has somehow just become diminished when we're in relationships that make us feel, like we need validation from other people. And getting to the point where we realize that the only voice that matters is ours is an empowering feeling. So just taking back that power, first of all, we take that power back. And to get more focused, there's just simple things that you can start doing like right now. The one thing that I love to do is mind dumping, because it feels like sometimes I have so many ideas. You have this huge checklist of all these things that you need to do, that you have to do. And we all have people all the time needing and wanting a little bit of our time.
The Healing Through Love podcast with Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. The Healing Through Love podcast with host Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org. Hello, welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Healing Through Love is here to help victim survivors of domestic and family violence find their way back into living a more fulfilling and meaningful life. We interview experts and survivors who share their personal stories and offer advice to those who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. As well as the Healing Through Love podcast, we hold annual Pamper Days in Adelaide, South Australia for survivors of domestic and family violence. This is where local businesses come together and pay it forward by providing their services and resources for the day to give our survivors a much-deserved day of indulgence. We are always on the lookout for organisations or people with similar values. Please get in touch if you want your organisation to be seen and to be heard. You can reach out to us at hello@htlaustralia.org. And my guest today is Mikita Smith. And Mikita is a small town girl. She's an entrepreneur and she's a girl mum. Mikita knows all too well the power of hitting reset, and she is passionate about helping others find the clarity and focus to create the life that they've always wanted. Welcome, Mikita, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is such a pleasure and an honor. I really appreciate you sharing your time and your space with me.
Oh, and the feeling is mutual. I can guarantee you that. Now, we're going to be talking about being intentional about, being in tune to yourself and to your business. How can we do that?
Well, the thing about being intentional is first we need to understand where we're at in our journey. So for a lot of us, depending on where we're at is depending on how we want to show up. So if you are someone who's just starting your business, or maybe you're coming out a relationship and you're thinking about what's your next step forward, it is so important to make sure that you understand where you want to go. How do you see that playing out for yourself? Because a lot of times we find ourselves in situations and we realize after we've already gotten to these situations that we didn't really put a lot of thought into what we were in tune to when we were making those decisions. So just being really intentional and saying, you know what, for this next journey, this next step, these next seeds that I'm planting in my life, I want to have inner peace, or maybe you feel like you want to have more financial freedom and you want to create something of your own, but you have to make sure that you're being intentional about how you're showing up, having the passion and the confidence to say, this is definitely what I want. I want this inner peace, and I'm going to do things to make sure that what I put out in the world also comes back to me. Because a lot of times, we say we want things, we want the inner peace, we want the financial freedom, and yet we don't show up for ourselves. So it's very important to be intentional about, how am I showing up? And that requires you to get to know yourself a little bit better.
It's not always easy especially when you're coming out of a traumatic situation, to be intentional and to be in tune with yourself, because you're dealing with a lot of other emotions at the same time. So if you've got a business and you are coming out of a traumatic situation, how can we then become more intentional and be more focused?
Well, as someone, I've been there before. I came out of a very traumatic and abusive relationship. And the one thing that I did know, that is what I wanted to do, something for myself to show my kids, like, regardless of what traumatic experience or challenge that you encompass, you can overcome those things. So I would say for anyone, if you are you're thinking about starting a business and you're just coming out of something that has been very stressful or challenging relationship, or maybe it was a failed business and you're kind of unsure, like, what am I doing? Am I really making the right decision here? Should I be doing this? Or do I need to I always say, just hit pause for a second. And I know we all live this busy life where everything's just constantly going and going, but you can hit pause. You can just take a moment and sit with yourself. And sitting with ourselves sometimes is the hardest thing in the world, but really sitting with yourself and having that moment to find the clarity, and just do some journaling. Ask yourself these questions like, what do I want? I call it the 3 levels of why, because our first why is just going to really scratch the surface of, why do I want to start this business? Why do I want to take this next step in my journey? And ask yourself that same question again and re-answer that question. And each time that you do it, dig a little deeper until you get to the root of what you really want to accomplish, because that's going to give you the clarity that you need so you can find the focus to take it to the next level. And in that way, you can really show up intentional about creating that business, creating that roadmap to where you want your life to go.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I think those of us who have come out of abusive relationships or some traumatic experience in our lives really need to step back and take the time to just refocus, regroup ourselves, and figure out what we really want to do with our life, because sometimes that part of our life had been stripped away, and so we have forgotten how to make decisions for ourselves without someone making those decisions for us. So taking the time, and journaling is a good thing to do as well, because it gets your thoughts down on paper, and you can dig, as you say, dig deeper, because sometimes you say things in your journal that you wouldn't necessarily say out loud to yourself.
You do. And also, it's just a moment to be truthful to who you are. A lot of times I find myself saying things and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I felt this way. Mm-hmm. Like, having that moment to just have that compassion for yourself and not judge or try to be anyone but you in those moments are just priceless. To just show up and just say, you know what, this is how I'm feeling today. This is where I'm at in this part of my journey. And it's okay to be here and to figure it out. I don't have to have every answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Now, sometimes it's good to actually set goals, but as long as you take baby steps to set those goals, do you have any advice on how we can go about doing that?
So I feel the easiest way to set goals is just taking it back to those SMART goals. And I know people have heard the SMART goals before, just being specific about what it is that you want to achieve. Make sure that the goals that you set are measurable, achievable, that achievable that in a way that you're setting a time frame around it that makes sense. And, you want to make sure that, you can set a time frame that makes sense to your goal. You don't want to say that, always use the example of me doing like 60 burpees in 1 minute and being able to do that within 3 days when I know I'm not conditioned enough to do 60 burpees, let alone in a minute. and be able to train for that and be ready to do it within 2 to 3 days. That's not going to happen. And a lot of times when we set goals for ourselves, we give ourselves such a small window, and we're like, if I don't do it, then I'm a failure and this is it. And I'm never going to do it again. But just using the SMART goal method and then breaking those goals down into bite-sized chunks. So say if I did want to, condition myself to do 60 burpees, how would I go about that? You break it down into small steps. Maybe I'll say, I'll start doing 5 burpees for the first week, 2 days a week, and you set a goal. I love to set my goals weekly. So at the beginning of the week, I set small goals for each day that I'm working on something that's going to lead me to that bigger goal, that bigger picture goal. So you can have that big picture goal and say, hey, this is the thing that I want to do. I want to construct this business. I want to start this business. I've waited long enough. I'm ready. This is the moment. And then the next step is, how do you plan to achieve it? You may need support from other people. And that's when you reach out to your support system or start forming a support system. Because a lot of times when we reach our goals, we have some setbacks because we don't have the support that we need. But getting those people in your life, that community around you, will help you to, reach those goals too. So I always say, set some SMART goals and make sure that you're breaking those goals down into small, achievable pieces. Because sometimes we set big goals and we are overwhelmed within the second month and feeling like this is too much and you're ready to pull your hair out.
Absolutely, yes. And, when we're not feeling our best and we're not in the best frame of mind, setting small goals that are achievable is, a good place to start. There's no good setting a big goal because you may not have the mental capacity to, achieve something that's absolutely huge once you've left this, traumatic relationship or traumatic experience. So, yeah, I totally get it. So, how can we become, I guess, more focused? Because it's not an easy task to stay focused because you have so many things to think about, especially if you've not been allowed to think for yourself.
That is true. And a lot of times we find ourselves feeling like we're powerless, like our voice has somehow just become diminished when we're in relationships that make us feel, like we need validation from other people. And getting to the point where we realize that the only voice that matters is ours is an empowering feeling. So just taking back that power, first of all, we take that power back. And to get more focused, I mean, there's just simple things that you can start doing like right now. The one thing that I love to do is mind dumping, because it feels like sometimes I have so many ideas. You have this huge checklist of all these things that you need to do, that you have to do. And we all have people all the time needing and wanting a little bit of our time. And if it's not your phone notifications, it's your email, like everything is happening. If you have kids, if you have a significant other, a parent that you're taking care of, time is so precious. So how you use it is valuable, but we can get really unfocused sometimes when we have so much happening. So I love to do a simple mind dump, and it depends on how I'm feeling, because when you have all those emotions, sometimes you can really feel the anxiety start to just build up in you. So I get a piece of paper. You don't have to keep it, but I get a piece of paper and I write down all my thoughts, all my to-do list, everything that I've ever thought about that I needed to do. And I put it on this paper, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. I just write it all out. And once I see all these things written down, I realize that some of these things are not a priority. And then in that moment, I can say, okay, these are things that I need to do today. These are things that can wait until next week. I can schedule these things for another day. And suddenly my list that felt like it had 200 things on it really only have 4 important things that have to happen at this moment right now. And then in that moment, you start to feel really clear and focused about, okay, now I know where I need to go. Understand what needs to happen now. But another thing that you can do, which is really cool and kind of different, is I love to, you don't have to have a yoga mat, but you can just lay in the floor. Like, I love just laying down on the floor because it takes me out of the environment. And now I don't have the distractions of the monitor, the phone, and I just lay there and I just talk out loud. Okay, so what are we going to do today? How do I feel like showing up today? Because I have these things that I need to do. And then checking in with myself in that moment really gives me the focus to say, okay, today, you have a lot of emotional stuff going on. How about let's not tackle that? Let's put this and schedule this for another day, but you are emotionally available to handle this situation here. So let's start here. And that gives you a lot of focus because you now have tapped into where you're at emotionally. You getting to know yourself in a whole different way, because I feel like when we come out of traumatic relationships, traumatic experiences, the first thing that we have to do is to get to know ourselves all over again. You start this whole process of understanding that, you know, what you say, like I said, what you say matters, and how you feel really counts for something. So just taking accountability to say, I can honor where I'm at in this moment, my feelings, checking in, and then that'll help you get really clear on how you want to show up and help you to be more focused and be more intentional too as you're showing up.
Yeah, that's a good point. You need to honor yourself, and realize that you are worthy of the attention that you are giving yourself, and not to let outside influences change anything about what you are, and just take the time out. And it's not selfish to take time out for yourself, even if you just lay on the floor and just close your eyes and just focus on just being, rather than focus on the things you need to be doing. Being is
Yeah,
quite often quite therapeutic.
it is. And you can add little things like if you love the smell of aromatherapy and you like to do the oils, you can get you an essential oil, and you can use that to help you to find calm and clarity as well. You can also light a candle. Sometimes it's about the atmosphere that you create around you that can also give you the focus that you need to just be in that moment and just be yourself. And sometimes having none of that, just getting away from everyone. I mean, me and one of my friends talked about this, getting home from work and sitting in the car just
Yeah.
with nothing on, complete silence, is just like a moment like you have no one thoughts, no outside anything. It's just your thoughts that you can finally hear clearly. And you can just take a moment and really focus on how you want to, show up. What do you want to do next? And you can get really clear in those moments.
Yeah, it gives you the time to put one foot in front of the other, right? Slowly, rather than having to run to, um, you know, and perhaps trip up or trip over because you're going too fast. It's quite often better just to take things slowly rather than pushing through and rushing along and doing stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm one of those people that when I get excited, the first thing I'm in, I'm like, I'm all in. I'm like, I'm gonna do this thing. And then after I've had some thought, I'm like, that was probably too big of a project. What were you thinking? You really need to start really thinking these things through. You get so excited because you have these passion projects and you really want to do these things. So now I allow myself, and I'll tell anybody, when you get excited, it's nothing wrong with wanting to do something amazing and great and different and new, but allow yourself to sit with that for a little bit and really plan through like how this would actually work. How much of your time are you really willing to devote to this? Because sometimes what we find ourselves doing is we're out of these traumatic experiences, and it may be a relationship with a friend where you found yourself trauma bonding with someone, and now you have this opportunity to just, it's you, and you don't have that other person there, or that, person that needs you all the time. So you just want to jump into the next thing that you feel needed for. So just giving yourself a moment to pull back and say, yeah, that is exciting. Let me give myself a little bit to think about what that would mean, how it would look in my everyday life, and could I really commit to it in the long run? How much time? And I find that for me, that really, really works. And I realized, okay, Kita, like you may be doing too much. It could be a back burner passion project along the line, but you don't have to do it now.
That's it. Yeah, it's really spot on. I think a lot of us take on passion projects. I know I'm very guilty of taking on passion projects, and then I get, into it, and then I realize it's taking up much more time than I have. And so I'm putting myself constantly under pressure to, get everything done. And when you're just trying to find your feet again, it is best just to not take on any passion projects, even if, you think that you can find the time. I think you need to get your mind very, very clear and wash away all the, those negative thoughts that perhaps, it's been instilled in you over time. And, just come back to yourself and find yourself worthy and find yourself as enough to get on with stuff. I think it's really important to come back to self.
You always have to come back to self. Self-love starts within, and that self-awareness comes from self-love and having compassion first for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. Mikita, where could people find you if they want to work with you, or find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to just connect with me, they can find me on Instagram at Mikita Smith _ That is mostly where you can find me at.
Yeah, and what's available on your website?
Oh, my website is actually, so my business is actually called Beautifully Unbalanced, because I feel that we all live a beautiful life, and it's not always balanced, and it doesn't have to be. That's the whole beauty of it. Everything fits exactly where it's supposed to be. So it's actually beautifullyunbalanced.com. And on my website, you will find a lot of different free guides. I have a free guide right now that is a 7-day guide to hit reset. So that is such a great, great tool. And it'll actually walk you through each day of different strategies that you can do to hit reset and get clarity and focus around the things that matter to you the most, so you can start creating that life that you want.
Yeah, that sounds really great. I think I'll find that and might put that in the show notes and share that around.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, Mikita, it's been a pleasure. If you could offer some advice to somebody, who is thinking about leaving a relationship, or someone that's just left, what would you offer them?
I would tell them that they are definitely worthy of this next journey in their life, and that the most important thing that matters is their happiness, their joy. And when they look at their current life right now, if you're thinking about leaving that relationship, does it truly bring you joy? When you think about your life situation, Does it bring you joy? And if it doesn't, then if it doesn't bring you joy, if it doesn't make you create the love that you have for yourself or make you feel inward love, then there's no way that you can really fully love the next person without truly loving everything about you, even the most imperfect things. And if you've walked away from a relationship, just understand that it is tough. It is tough. You are not alone. Please connect with people that support and understand you. Reach out to those people, because there is someone that definitely that would love to be in your life, that would love to love you just as you are.
Yeah, great advice. I think that's wonderful. I think, if you're thinking of leaving or you've left it, and it certainly isn't an easy decision, but don't go backwards. Don't go back because, that's where you felt, you may not have felt safe. That would be the wrong word to use, but it's your comfort zone, I suppose, because you don't know anything else. But new experiences are waiting for anyone. Don't just never go backwards. No.
No, never go backwards. It's always forward. You never want to go back. You've come too far to go back.
Absolutely. Mikita, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.